So how do you think this operation affects the global image of the United States? And does it look like a defender of democracy or more like a rogue state acting unitarily?
Well, I think you'd have to have some serious vision issues to see the U.S. as a defender of democracy.
大家好，我是戴。美军越境绑架委内瑞拉领导人的军事行动正处在风口浪尖，许多国际评论认为这挑战了国家主权原则，并可能引发地区动荡。现在我就站在纽约联邦法院门外，委内瑞拉总统马杜罗今天在这里接受了他被美军抓捕后的首次庭审。我们来采访一下美国人如何看待特朗普政府的此次行动。How do you feel about the U.S. military entering a sovereign nation to arrest its head of state without the United Nations approval?
I feel very angry and very frustrated that my tax dollars are being used in this way, with very few checks, balances, or controls, least of all the consent of the American people, to go and intervene in a completely legitimate foreign country. Regardless of what country that is and how I feel about the particular leader, I am against U.S. foreign intervention in every context.
Absolutely. Before I answer that question, I would like to state that I am from that country. I have lived in that country. My family's in that country. So I'm here to give you the perspective from a Venezuelan. I am very happy that the U.S. military intervened. And if you're wondering, why? It's not because I like Trump and it's not because I like the U.S. I actually hate Trump and I hate the U.S. and I hate everything that the DOJ stands for. Fuck their policies. But at the same time, for the past 27 years, every country around the world globally has ignored our cry for help. We have asked countries all over the world, hey, please intervene, help, save us, do something. And they did nothing. You know what happened? Russia and came in and they started stealing our oil. So if you ask me about, oh, they're going to take our oil, well, I'm here to say they've already been stealing our oil. So no, we don't give a fuck. Liberate us. For Venezuelans, you have to wait 2 to 4 hours in line at a gas station to get some gas in your fucking car. We lose electricity 3 times a day. We have no food. We have no water. We eat rats. We eat dogs. We eat food off the floor. So the oil, fuck it. Take it. We don't see a dime from it. We don't even have enough oil to fucking put gas in our cars. And a greedy, manipulative businessman president like Trump had to get involved. But you know what? Fuck Trump. At least he did something. So to answer your answer in short, yeah, I'm happy the U.S. military intervened because they're the first people ever to do something. And anyone who says otherwise, you don't give a fuck about the Venezuelan people, and say it with your chest. You don't give a fuck about the Venezuelan people. You just hate Trump. That's simply what it is.
Well, I think that's the question kind of answers itself. I oppose it. I think that, I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone from Venezuela. A lot of people, oppose the Venezuelan government for perfectly valid reasons. The question, or I think they're perfectly valid. Question for me is, are our leaders telling us the truth? Because there's a record, my entire lifetime is characterized by lies. I could just name, the list of countries that everybody can name, which I won't even bother, but we've seen lie after lie after lie. And I think we all, I don't think anybody really believes that Venezuela is responsible for the lion's share of the drugs coming in, or that this really had anything to do with drugs. So on that basis alone, as an American, I oppose it.
They didn't approve for Congress either, right? And they did it, but I think it was for the right reasons, for the right time.
I have mixed opinions. Mixed opinions on it. Just going in and capturing a head of state sets a bad precedent to go into other nations and do the same, and also for other nations to come in and try to do the same to us, to capture a president or a diplomat. I don't think that that's right without UN approval. But again, mixed. I have a mixed opinion because, this guy's accused of narco-terrorism. He's accused of bringing thousands of tons of illegal drugs, cocaine, into the country. We've had the, war on drugs, to use a cliche, for decades. And, if this will put some kind of stop to it, on that front, I'm for it. So again, mixed opinion.
The U.S. military used over 150 aircraft and conducted strikes that resulted in civilian and foreign casualties. So in your view, is the capture of one man worth the risk of starting an international conflict?
Absolutely not.
People have already been dying. So am I afraid of more people dying? No, we were dying anyways. At least we're not dying for nothing now. At least we're dying and the world is actually giving a fuck and seeing. And it's in the media. Before we were dying and it wasn't even in the media.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And that, let me just say, that doesn't make any sense because, you know, in warfare, the attackers almost always suffer casualties. The fact that the defenders suffered, you know, dozens of casualties and the attackers suffered zero is very strange to me, and I think that demands some kind of explanation.
This conflict is not even a conflict. The Venezuela saw this coming. They were threatening the US with retaliation. They eventually didn't. They just showed off their military might.
Oh man, that's a tough question. Again, this is not the capture of one average man, one average criminal. This is a guy who's causing thousands upon thousands of deaths in the United States to civilians, to innocent people by putting drugs on the street. You know, we applauded when we went in and we killed Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. You know, in recent times, nobody had a problem with that. People seem to have a problem with this. But again, mixed opinion. He was a president of a country. I think you should, there should be a way to do that without airstrikes, without civilian casualties. But also, he's a criminal, alleged. He's an alleged criminal for bringing those drugs into the country. And drugs are a severe problem in the United States. So, I'm on the fence. Depending which way I'm looking at it from, I could see it either way.
If another country, say Russia or China, conducted a similar capture operation against the leader they had indicted, how would you expect the U.S. government to react?
Well, the U.S. government would react unfavorably towards anything that China or Russia's governments did. If I'm going to be against any foreign intervention, then I don't have any. I think that makes sense to be angry. But if I'm against any foreign intervention, U.S. foreign intervention is the one I'm against most as an American. So I would understand if Russia and China would be calling out this move left and right. Just because we do it doesn't make it any less bad.
I would expect. It's hard to even imagine, honestly, but no, they wouldn't accept it. If the Russians abducted Zelensky, that would not go over well in Washington. That would be a casus belli, I think, to put it mildly.
I think the U.S. government, in my opinion, would react negatively to that. I think the U.S. chooses under this administration and maybe some previous administrations, the U.S. chooses to be an aggressor. I'm not all for that. I'm not for being an aggressor. I'm not for civilian casualties. But again, this guy's a little bit different. Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, they were causing casualties abroad and to their own people. I was all for that when it happened. I think people cross party lines when for those guys. For this guy, it seems like a lot of people are sticking to their party line and their view. But I have a strong opinion. I have a strong opinion on drugs in this country, and this is a guy that needed to be stopped.
It's unlikely because then World War III would start. To be honest, yeah.
I'm going to skip that question because Russia and China, whatever they want to do in their international relations, I'm just a Venezuelan and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Venezuelan people and how I feel about Maduro. Russia, China, that's their situation.
Trump administration has labeled Maduro as a narco-terrorist responsible for flooding U.S. streets with fentanyl and cocaine. And do you feel this military action was a necessary step to protect American communities from drug cartels?
No. I think that is a homegrown problem with a homegrown solution. And I don't think narco-terrorist even existed as a word before a couple of years ago. So that doesn't make me feel any safer at all.
Do I think it was a necessary step to protect American communities from drug cartels? No, because I believe that the American government is in ties with the cartel as well. I feel like the drug problem is something that is intentionally kept there. Same thing with the pharmaceutical problem. everyone, especially America, wants drug addicts because it's money. And it also helps with the overpopulation issue. So it's not a war on drugs. It's not a war on narcos. It's not a war. No, they just want better control of it. And I can guarantee you that Maduro, in or out of the presidency, the fentanyl problem and all that shit's still going to exist. Go to literally any club in Bushwick.
No, it's, you know, I can't rule it out. Maybe he was the head of a fentanyl trafficking organization. Maybe he had some role in fentanyl trafficking, but you know, time will tell. If my expectation is that in 6 months or a year, that the fentanyl crisis will not have been resolved in any way, shape, or form. That's my prediction.
I don't. This is why I personally, just a personal opinion, think that yes, we're going to get drugs off the street. We're going to get drugs stopped coming into this country from Venezuela. But I think there's ulterior motives. I really don't think that drugs was the primary reason that we went and took this guy out. The Republican administration, Trump administration, they make no secret about it. They want Venezuela's oil. I think this was a convenient path to gain popularity among the American citizens, saying, hey, we're going to do this for you to take the drugs off the streets, but also they're getting the benefit of that oil.
I hope it stopped with Venezuela, but I don't think it's going to stop currently. With Maduro being arrested is one step for a better future for people, for the United States and people worldwide.
Now that Maduro has been removed, are you optimistic that Venezuela can begin a so-called peaceful transition to a free market liberal democracy?
Well, if we look at the majority, if not all, the other countries that the U.S. has intervened in, crying democracy and human rights, that hasn't happened. I think we will instill someone into power that is going to be favorable to the U.S. and going to prioritize trading and working with the current administration. I don't think that the human rights of the Venezuelan people is even on the list of the top 100 things that the administration was thinking when they did this.
Not right away. Stuff like that does not happen right away. And the United States over history, we've had that optimistic view of we're going to go in somewhere and we're going to make them, you know, democracy with free capital and free trade. And it's been shown that it has not worked in many countries around the world. So it might work there, but it's not going to be tomorrow. It's not going to be in 10 years. It's going to be over time if it's going to work.
Peaceful? No, far from it. I think it's actually going to be very tumultuous. I think it's going to be very volatile. I believe that there's going to be a lot of uproar, uprising. There's going to be a lot of deaths, casualties, fatalities. But at the same time, change isn't always pretty, especially when we've reached the point like we've reached with Venezuela, where the Venezuelan people have lost all hope. We are at rock bottom, and now it takes something radical in order to spark change. Because like I said, the world was silent until all of a sudden America got involved. So I think it's going to be a shit show. I think the transitional period is going to be very intense and a lot of people are going to die. But like I said before, at least now they're dying in the name of change. They're dying in the face of the media. They're not dying in silence anymore, and they're not dying for nothing.
Yes, we are all hoping that, especially peacefully. Yes, we want that.
No, I think Venezuela has begun a very violent transition to probably civil war, if anything.
And do you think that violent transition will eventually like aim towards like free market liberal democracy? Or
I think it will. I think Venezuela, if they're lucky, will kind of end up like, you know, Colombia or something like that. And but who knows? Venezuela could look like Syria or Yemen in a year or two. Who knows? So I'm very worried, and we'll see what happens. But I think that, you know, being here in New York City in front of this courthouse, and the fact that this city has turned into the epicenter of global geopolitical conflagration is really not what I would like to see. I think that I'm worried about students and homeless people and the community here in this city, and I don't personally want to have anything to do with this.
the U.S. is now so-called owning the rebuilding of Venezuela. So are you worried that the potential cost to U.S. taxpayers and the risk of another like decade-long nation-building project like Afghanistan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it didn't work in Afghanistan. We ended up just abandoning that and then pulling out. It's going to cost the taxpayer $1. And again, this is all cost for oil. We've seen it before in this country. We've seen it when we've gone after, Iraq, 30 years ago, 25 years ago. It's going to cost the taxpayers money, and we're not going to see the average American, the middle class American, is not going to see a lot of those benefits in their lifetime.
Yes, that's the primary reason I'm protesting today, is because I don't want my tax dollars to go towards foreign intervention, nation building experiments that always result in failure and more death and suffering for the people in those nations. So I hate that my money's being spent on this. That's why I'm here, because it angers me, and I wish that we would spend it on education, food, things for our own people first.
Yeah, the cost to taxpayers, if there were a real rebuilding process, I think that wouldn't be tremendous cost to taxpayers. I think the cost to taxpayers is from the waste, fraud, and abuse of the military-industrial complex. That's the real cost to taxpayers that I'm worried about.
So how do you think this operation affects the global image of the United States? And does it look like a defender of democracy or more like a rogue state acting unitarily?
Well, I think you'd have to have some serious vision issues to see the U.S. as a defender of democracy when you actually look past the headline written by U.S. media sources. I think it's I don't think this is going to be looked upon favorably by anyone around the world.
Well, I think that we were already a rogue state, and so I think there's very little effect. The United States had basically no reputation left to tarnish, and now I think that I think at least for anyone who could somehow try to explain away things the last 20, 30, 40 years, I think the veil has been lifted. So that's something to come out of this that might be positive.
The latter, where we look like a bully going in. And I think other nations will take notice and maybe even worry about the U.S. being an aggressor. I'm not for war. I wasn't for any of the past wars in my lifetime. I'm not for military strikes in Venezuela, especially military strikes for oil being disguised as taking drugs off the street. Again, we'll see those benefits of, some drugs being taken off the street. But we still have a long way to go on the so-called war on drugs. I think the U.S. is going to be seen as a bully, as an enemy by many countries around the world.
Do you believe this action makes the Western Hemisphere safer, or does it risk provoking a larger conflict with Venezuela's allies like Russia and Cuba?
I don't think it's going to provoke Russia or Cuba to get into any kind of military action with us. I don't think that they are that, that dumb, for lack of term. I don't think I think they'll take watch. I don't think they'll be an aggressor while Trump is in office. That's for sure. This guy is very knee jerk, very, very push button. I think any countries that maybe potentially would be a threat to us around the world, Cuba, Russia, China, North Korea, I think those guys play the long game, and it's been proven over time. Those play the long game. I think they would not deal with Trump and maybe wait for an administration that has a different mindset on war.
So I do believe that there's going to be backfire, and I don't think it's necessarily going to benefit the Western Hemisphere unless it's in a financial aspect where they're going to get money from our oil. On a social aspect, I do not believe it's going to benefit us. I don't. I think it's going to cause more division, and I think that it may cause conflict globally, but that's the art of war. You're always going to have allies coming in for each other.
好了，本期的视频就到这里，感谢大家的观看，更感谢同学们的助力。如果你觉得我的视频有点意义，欢迎关注我的账号“代议春秋”。